Hey, Algebra 2, good job challenging yourself and taking on this should do activity, and you're going to be looking at inverses of functions. Here we go. We're going to be finding inverses of functions in two ways. The first way is by graphing. It's similar to what you see here in this graph, and then the second way is algebraically. When you're looking at a graph, the inverse of the function is going to be the reflection across the line y equals x. That's this line right here. And so we're going to reflect that by just switching the x and y values. So if we have a point of 0, 2, that point is now going to be 2, 0, and so on and so forth down the table. When you graph it, you'll see that it is a reflection across that line y equals x. And the other thing you'll notice is that the domain and the range just flip. So because this is not a continuous function, for the domain, we're just going to list out the x values, and for the range, we're going to list out the y values. And you'll notice that when we do the inverse, they just flip. So here's what our graph ends up looking like. Again, we just flipped those x and y values. If you drew in your line y equals x, it would be right there. So you can see it's a reflection. And again, the domain and range are just flipped in the inverse. Now we're going to find inverses algebraically. So what we want to focus on is undoing the original function. So the example they give us is this function x plus 6. If we undo that, we're going to do x minus 6. You can think of the opposite operation here a lot too. So down here, our first one, f of x equals x plus 2/3. The inverse is going to be x minus 2/3. The next one, our function is x divided by 3. So the inverse is going to be the opposite, 3 times x, multiplying instead. And the last one, x minus 1/2, the inverse is going to be x plus 1/2, doing the opposite operation. For functions that are a little more complicated than the ones we just did, here's some steps you can follow. Step 1, you're going to rewrite the function with y equals. So down here, instead of f of x, we're going to write y equals. Then we're going to solve the function for x, so get x by itself. And then lastly, we'll just rewrite using x as the variable that's in the equation. So looking at this one down here, I'm going to get x by itself. So I'm drawing my line down through my equal sign just to keep both sides of my equation separate. The first thing I'm going to do is divide both sides by 3. So I have y over 3 equals, here my 3's simplify, and I just have x minus 7. Then I'm going to add 7 to both sides. So I have y over 3 plus 7 equals x. Then the last step was to rewrite using x as the variable. So instead of y, I'm just going to rewrite that with x plus 3, x over 3, plus 7 equals our function, f of x. And for inverse, we're going to use this little minus 1 symbol to show that that is the inverse function of what we started with. So I rewrote it with y instead of f of x, and then I got x by itself. So I rearranged it until x was by itself. And then I just put x as the variable again and rewrote it as this is the inverse function of f of x. In this one, I started by adding 5 to both sides, and then I multiplied both sides by -2 to get rid of this -1/2. You could also divide both sides by -1/2. It'd be the same thing. Over on the left-hand side, I would use the distributive property here, and I would get -2y minus 10 equals x, and then I rewrote that with x as the variable. In this example, Juan is buying a CD, so yes, this is a little dated, but it's 20% off. He has to pay $2.50 for shipping, and the total charge is $13.70. So the first thing we're going to do is write an equation to represent this. If it's 20% off, that means he's going to end up paying 80% of the original price. I'm going to use P for price. Plus $2.50 for shipping equals $13.70. So when you're getting the list price, basically solving this equation for P, it feels just like you're solving a regular equation, and you are, but you're thinking about those inverse operations, right? Doing the opposite all the way through. And you get the list price to be $14.